Hello and welcome to our Summer Scares middle grade panel. I'm Julia Smith, Senior Editor, Books for Youth at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. A link to the 2026 Summer Scares Programming Guide was included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download it, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the link located there. If you have any trouble, please contact Booklist at webinars@booklistonline.com. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable them on your screen, please look for and click the Show Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of them at any time by selecting Caption Settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. We'd like to start today's webinar with a brief introduction about the Summer Scares program. For those of you unfamiliar, the Summer Scares reading list includes titles selected by a panel of authors and librarians and is designed to promote the horror genre as a great reading option for readers of all ages and for any time of the year. The program is designed by the Horror Writers Association in partnership with iREAD, Book Riot, NoveList, and Booklist. As I mentioned earlier, we sent a link to the 2026 Summer Scares Programming Guide in the reminder email, but please feel free to ask for that link in the Q&A box if you are unable to locate it. We'll happily share it with you. Let's get to the reason we are here today, our wonderful authors. We have the pleasure of hearing from Malinenko, author of This Appearing House from HarperCollins, Bree Paulsen, creator of Garlic and the Vampire from Quill Tree Books, and Ali Russell, author of It Came from the Trees from Delacorte Press. We will hear a brief presentation from each panelist about their book, and then move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar. We will start with Ali Malinenko, author of This Appearing House. Ali, you can turn your camera and mic on so you can tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay, hi everybody. I hope everyone can hear me. My name is Ali Malinenko. I am the author of middle grade horror novels. I am the author here. I'll share some of them. I'm the author of Ghost Girl. I am the author of Broken Dolls, which has on top one of my favorite things in the world, which is a blurb from Stephen King. And I am the author of the book we are discussing today, which is This Appearing House. So I can tell you a little bit about This Appearing House. It is the story of a girl named Jack and her best friend Hazel. And for as long as they've lived in their town, there's never been a house at the cul-de-sac at Juniper Drive until one day that there is. And when Jack sees the house, it comes in time where she's counting down to the 5-year anniversary of her cancer diagnosis. And she's hoping to be declared what is called in the medical community NED, which stands for no evidence of disease. But with the house appearing and her hands have been shaking and she had a fall from her bicycle, Jack's starting to wonder if these are symptoms or if maybe something strange is happening. So when two classmates dare Jack and her friend Hazel to go into the house, she knows the front door is the way in, but it's definitely not going to be the way out. So she realizes, well, with her time in there, that the house wants something for her, and she will not be able to leave until she figures out what that is. And I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you, Allie. I can't wait to discuss this more with you. Next, we will hear from Bree Paulsen, creator of Garlic and the Vampire, our graphic novel selection this year. Please tell us about your book, Bree.
Hello, I'm Bree Paulsen. I am the author and illustrator of Garlic and the Vampire, along with its sequel, Garlic and the Witch. And then I have my third book, The Firelight Apprentice, which also has some spooky elements to it. I'm super honored to be here for Garlic and the Vampire, especially since, like, a lot of people consider this more a very cozy title. I mean, it's anthropomorphic vegetables having a safely scary event happen in their lives. And yeah, uh Rock of the Vampire is about is cute little community of vegetable people who were brought to life by a witch, and they like sell their respective produce at like the town market, and they realize that someone might be residing in the once abandoned castle on the hill, and they realize that it might be a vampire. So of course they elect Garlic to go and face this totally scary vampire up on the hill. But at the same time, uh, Garlic is dealing with all the anxiety that she is often feels plagued by. She's late to things and it doesn't help. So it is a lot about her just getting the courage to do things, even though she's really scared, which is really important for kids to learn because as well as adults, like sometimes you just have to do the thing scared, and everything will be okay.
So true. Thank you, Bree. And our third author today is Allie Russell, who wrote It Came from the Trees. And Allie, if you can tell us just a little bit about your book.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. First, I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that, Julia?
Not yet, no.
Oh, hang on. See, I knew I was
Wait,
going to mess this up. How's that?
it's starting to share. There we go.
Okay,
Amazing.
thank you. So I'm Allie. I'm the author of It Came from the Trees. This is a spooky cryptid camping story for kids 10 and up. It's about a girl named Jenna whose best friend gets taken by a creature that's not supposed to exist. She goes to her parents, she goes to the cops, she tries to get help from a bunch of adults, but none of the adults are able to find or rescue her best friend. So she thinks, well, I have the most wilderness experience, so only I can do it. So she ventures back out into the woods with a new scout troop to try to track down her friend. Um, there are lots of like Bigfoot scenes. I spend a lot of time thinking about cryptids. So I just tried to write the scariest cryptid book that I would have wanted to read when I was a kid. I also spent a lot of time thinking about found footage horror and the Blair Witch Project, which heavily inspired this book. So I also tried to include elements that felt a little found footage horror-y. So the story is told through traditional narrative, but also through blog posts, newspaper articles, and scout guide tips to kind of really pull readers into the story. But yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about cryptids, and I'm showing you this photo because I have a good friend up in Canada, and she works kind of near the woods, I think, but she took this photo. And we don't know how it got there, but I like to think of it as proof that he's real, he's out there, and you can read a spooky Bigfoot book about him.
That's pretty convincing evidence, I have to say. Okay, everybody, if you can get your cameras on, get your mics on. This is our chance to just chat together about horror and your books in particular. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so happy to be here.
All right. So you are our choices for the middle grade readers this year for summer scares. And that covers a pretty wide range. I would say you'll get I think of it as like third through eighth grade, roughly. So you can do a lot in that range. And so where you're gonna not want to like probably terrify the 8-year-old to their core. Um, which is, when we really need garlic. But if you could sort of say, where would you kind of place your books on like a spectrum of fear or funny horror or cozy horror, that kind of thing, just so our audience gets another sense of that. Um, and you can jump in or I can pick on you.
Garlic is definitely more on the funny, cozy side of horror. Like I'm excited to get into some actual horror with my current work on progress, but yeah, Garlic is very much like this is a very safe zone to experience more like big feelings that can be scary rather than like actual external horrors, which is definitely something that like kids today are dealing with, like lots of big emotions and anxieties for things. And I think that's why Garlic is picked up so much by children. Like I just did a convention and had so many booksellers, librarians, parents telling me like my kids always pick up your book or it's just constantly off the shelf. It's just like a very safe space to experience like the more internal like scares that we like try to manage, but it can be very difficult, especially when you're young and you're still learning to regulate your emotions.
I think for me, I don't think that this appearing house is terribly scary, but I have been told that I'm very, very wrong about that fact. Um, so take that as you will. I will say there's a scene in particular that involves teeth that a lot of people tend to highlight as absolutely horrific. But also at the same time, those are mostly adults that consider it horrific. It is also when I do class visits and I talk to kids, their absolute favorite scene. So the kids want the scares. So I would say, I don't know, if we're going to put on a scale of like 0 to 10, 0 being, garlic cozy and 10 being 10 being as scary as it gets. I don't know, like maybe like a 7. I definitely know people who would say it was a 10, but I'm gonna go with a 7.
That seems right to me. I would
Okay.
say yours is like also very atmospheric and sort of like that sinister undertone going.
Cool. I love
So
that.
yes. So it's not as like not like flashy big scares so
Right.
much. Just for some context there.
I think I'm in the same boat as Allie. Like, I don't think that anything I write is that scary. And I guess it's kind of like when you watch a horror movie and you know where all the jump scares and the when the music's going to get loud, like everything. So it's a little bit more difficult to be scared, I guess, of anything that like I've created. I guess I'm probably somewhere in like the 5, 6 range, maybe. I have also talked to kids, and the kids are always like, oh yeah, it was kind of scary. And the adults, though, are like, that freaked me out. You're writing some dark stuff. So I think adults are more freaked out by middle grade horror than kids, which just proves the point that kids are tough and don't need to be coddled when it comes to horror.
Yeah, kids love creepy shit. Sorry. Yeah, kids love spooky stuff.
Sure do. I love that. Um, okay. So we're all horror fans here, I would say. Has this been a lifelong love? Did you come to it later in life? Like what's your story? on that front? And what do you really love about the genre? And it doesn't have to be book specific. You can talk about movies or shows or anything that sort of got you into it and hooked you.
I think
I was definitely always a lifelong horror fan. I used to Well, I would say my gateway drug on horror was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And it was the stories, but it was more than that. It was the illustrations that were the things that lived in my brain for forever. Um, and then, but my mom, so I also had nightmares very easily. So my mom was like, what are we doing? So, she would keep an eye out on like what I was reading. So what I started doing is my oldest sister, who's 7 years older than me, is also has been a lifelong horror fan. And she's a giant Stephen King fan. And I used to sneak into her room when she wasn't home, and I would read Stephen King books, and I would memorize what page I was on. So my mom didn't know I was reading them, and she didn't know I was reading them, and I was just scaring myself, which was great. Um, which is why, again, when he asked to blurb my book and it came full circle, was one of the coolest moments of my life. And my older sister Jen was like, "This is all my doing. I did this for you." And I was like, "It's not untrue. It's not. You did." So yeah, it's always been something that I've loved. And I've written a couple middle grade books. I have an idea for a YA one, and I'm just now starting to like think about adult horror, which feels good, but also like I don't know. In one ways, I think it's much harder to write middle grade than adults. But in the other hand, I'm like, oh, do I have the chops though? Like, can I make it scary enough? I don't know. But yeah, I definitely I've always been a horror fan. Thank you, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yes, I was just in a bookstore the other day that specializes in horror and just sort of like looking through their offerings and facing out scary stories to tell in the dark. And I'm with you on the illustrations because I was talking with my friend who was there about how there have been a couple re-releases with different illustrations over the years. And I was like, why would you even? Like, please.
Criminal.
I agree.
I think sometimes Allie and I are living the same life. I'm one of four girls, and I also used to sneak into my big sister's room. We're 5 years apart in age, but it wasn't for Stephen King. It was for Fear Street and Christopher Pike. That's what lined her shelves. And so I used to, and you're not allowed in your big sister's room, no matter how like nice your older sister is to you, you're still not allowed in their room. So again, when she went to color guard practice, I'd sneak in there and take whatever Christopher Pike or Arl Stein had the most interesting cover. But yeah, it's been also a lifelong thing. My family is big into Halloween and horror. We used to do big Halloween parties. Like my dad, like his favorite activity was scaring us. Sometimes we would go to bed and he'd turn off the light and then he'd hang by the doorway and just be very still and very quiet. And we would go, "Dad, Dad." And he would start like a low growl and then he would turn the lights on. But like that's just how my family is. Like if you're not scaring somebody, what are you doing with your time? But yeah, it's always been spooky for life.
Yeah, it's funny. I also grew up with like big like Halloween parties like thrown by my parents, like hocus pocus levels of like everyone coming down to like dress up, decking out the house and stuff. I think I'm slightly late to horror. I only got into it really like in college. But I've always loved like Halloween, like spooky stuff. I always loved learning all about all like the folklore and stuff, especially around like whenever they would have like the History Channel specials on like folklore and stuff behind Halloween. I would always eat all that stuff up. So I've always loved spooky stuff, but I guess like actually getting into horror wasn't until like high school and college because like when I was in high school, we went to our friend's house who like they had one TV upstairs, one TV downstairs, and like a group stayed downstairs to watch Amityville Horror, and the rest of us, the other three, we watched Sixth Sense. Amityville Horror is a shorter movie, so as we were still watching this, they were directed to a hidden passage that led to the room that we were watching in, and they shook the door. We just like scrambling out, and of course like we turned back and they're just like cackling in the doorway. um yeah.
A lot of fun and a lot of love wrapped in these horrifying experiences. I love all that. So I would say the past 4 years or even more at this point, we've had like a big resurgence in the horror genre for kids specifically. And seeing it for middle grade. And like Allie Russell, you mentioned Fear Street and all of these, like there have been these like core series that have always been around for like multiple generations. But I love that we've been having like continual output and it's like holding strong. And what is it that you think kids might be drawn to in this genre? Like, I know that adults tend to have concerns about kids reading here, but like they clearly love it and they clearly want it, and we were those kids. So, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think is sort of driving it?
I think it helps that like kids are just so imaginative. Like that part of themselves hasn't been squashed down that much by like reality yet. And like especially right now, like there are some really scary things happening in the real world, and like horror offers a really good conduit for navigating such like perilous things like in fiction. Like I'm friends with Trevor Henderson, and he's always like whenever when I saw him at a convention, he was swamped by kids because they just love like spooky stuff. They love like weird monsters and things, and it definitely is something that like I don't know. I'm not saying that like it necessarily speaks to children, but like just seeing like especially like monster stuff like being like so out there, like because it's the kind of things that kids make up on their own. Like kids make up some really dark stuff when they're just make believe playing with themselves and stuff. So I think I wonder if there's like kind of like, oh, you're like me, like kind of a thing going on.
Yeah, I agree with Bree. I think that it offers a solace. I think when kids read scary books, they learn how to fight monsters. And that means when they grow up and they meet the real world monsters, they'll recognize them for what they are, and I think it gives kids agency, like kids are powerless. Like they're told what to do and when to do it, and this lets them root for the hero, and it lets them like go into the dark and battle the monster. And I think horror also, it tells the truth, like we lie to kids a lot. We tell them the dog had to go live on the farm, and horror doesn't do that. And it offers like, it teaches you about fear, because fear doesn't offer a middle ground. Like you either succumb to fear or you overcome it. That's your only two choices. And I think that is the kind of lesson that you can learn through books that you will carry through life. And I guess, and finally, at the end of the day, like it's just fun. Like it's just fun. It's like when you go to the movie theater with your friend and you go see a scary movie and you get so scared you both scream at the same time and then you immediately start laughing. Like it's fun. It's a fun experience. And no one would ever contemplate taking a funny book out of a kid's hand. And yet with horror books, people get weird. And I don't know. For me, it's just it's a privilege. I feel so privileged to be able to write horror for kids, to watch them shoulders back, head high, just go into the dark and just know that they're going to be okay.
I think for me, it's I was one of those kids who was always afraid like of everything all the time. And not just because I was reading horror, like, I was afraid of new people, I was afraid of crowds, I was afraid of like trying anything new. Like the anxiety was very, very high when I was a kid. And I think that's why part of why I read so much. But also in reading horror, it's a good, like Bree was saying, it's a good outlet for letting out a scream. I remember one time I was going through something difficult. This is as an adult, I was going through something difficult, and my husband and I were like, okay, let's just go to the movies. And we went to go see an Annabelle movie. I forget which one. I think it's the one with the babysitters. The babysitters at the house, and somebody like lets Annabelle out of her room. But tons of jump scares, and I screamed throughout that. I had never gone to the movies to like see an Annabelle movie because I hadn't been interested before, but I went. All the jump scares, it was such a release. It was so cathartic to be able to scream like that. And I think that like kids, it is a very scary time right now. And I think that we underestimate like horror as a type of medicine or a balm for some of that scariness. And I agree with Allie. Like, it's just fun. It's like a roller coaster. I just got done telling like bunches of kids that this last week that like reading horror is fun. It's like you're safe still. You can have the thrills and the chills that you get on a roller coaster, but the same way they put that lap bar over your belt, you can still close a book and you're safe usually wherever you're reading.
There's some really good scares in that Annabelle movie too.
Yeah.
I recently just did
It's
like a
like an
whole
elevated, or sorry, not elevated. I was going to say slightly more adult Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, because I love Are You Afraid of the Dark, and I don't want to make it seem like, Are You Afraid of the Dark has some genuinely scary episodes too.
I was an Are You Afraid of the Dark kid, an Erie, Indiana kid.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally agree. It's fear is like an important emotion to know about yourself too. Like we have a lot of like emotional literacy that we do, and it's always good to like take the time for maybe the ones that make us a little more uncomfortable and to better understand them, and like in these safe spaces to have that opportunity is very important, I think. Um, so about your books specifically, I know our audience would love to hear a little bit more about like either inspiration or the process of writing it that you had. Um, yeah, does anyone want to get started on that?
Me, for inspiration, like I said, I spend a lot of time thinking about cryptids and found footage horror. I really can't get enough of found footage horror. So, the Blair Witch Project was one of those movies that I grew up with. Um, I can't speak, to the age of the audience, but I think a lot of us grew up thinking that when we were kids, when we watched it, we thought that it was real, because the internet was still new, and I was 10. I was still a little kid, and you didn't really have the resources that we have now. I'm still kind of in awe at the marketing behind that movie, because the marketing was part of what made it seem and feel so real. So I leaned into that when I was trying to write It Came from the Trees. Like I wanted kids to feel how I felt watching the Blair Witch Project for that first time. Um, it's also inspired by every cryptid documentary and podcast that I've ever listened to or watched. My husband says that I've seen them all, and I have not. I know that there are still more out there that I need to see. So yeah, just my genuine love of cryptids inspired it.
Yeah, for me,
Allie,
it's
I have to say I'm a little older than you. So when I experienced the Blair Witch Project for the first time, it was a bootlegged copy that a friend of mine had gotten before there was any advertising that was going on. I 100% believed it was real. 100%. So they got us all, is what I'm saying. They got us all with that
Yep.
incredible movie.
True. And I grew up around there. I grew
Oh
up
my
in
God.
the Maryland area. And so I was like, I know these woods. Oh no.
Oh, that's terrifying. Like I grew up in the Appalachians, so like I know woods, but I knew there weren't those woods. Not that the Appalachians don't have a whole host of terrible stories. Like, did you hear something whistle? No, you didn't. It's the big one. No, you didn't. Did you hear it tap at the window? No, you didn't. I guess for me, the inspiration for Disappearing House is kind of multiple things. One being, clearly my cancer diagnosis, and wanting to write about that, but not about that. I think there are a lot of incredible middle grade books that are written that are about survivorship. And that's not really what I want to talk about. For instance, the word cancer only appears in Disappearing House one time. It's only mentioned once. All of it is about Jack's anxiety and her inability to face what she went through and to process it and to deal with it. And that is why the house appears to her. So she's given kind of no choice but to deal with it. So there was my diagnosis. And I knew I always wanted to write a haunted house story because haunted houses are my favorite things. Like Allie Scott of Cryptids, I live for a good haunted house. I must have watched The Haunting of Hill House, the Mike Flanagan version, 7,000 times at least. I live for the bent neck lady. So I knew, with haunted houses being my favorite, and I went, if you read the opening of The Disappearing House and you are at all familiar with Shirley Jackson's book, The Haunting of Hill House, you will see a very clear similarity. Like I didn't plagiarize. I wrote my own thing, but it is an absolute homage to Miss Jackson, because Shirley is hands down one of my favorite writers in the whole world. So yeah, I found that the way I could talk about the anxiety I had knitted very, very neatly together with a haunted house story. And it was a nice balance because it was a hard thing to write about, but I was writing about my favorite kind of scary story. So it offered a nice balance. So I didn't, get up in the morning because in terms of process, so I'm a librarian. So I write before I go to work. So I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning writing, and I'm not a morning person at all. So that's fun for me. So it was a way for me to be like, okay, it's very early. It's a very hard topic, but it's a haunted house and you're going to have a good time. So yeah.
For me, I love vampires. Like I'm currently adapting Dracula, which happened to be like one of the sources of inspiration for Garlic because I did a lot of research into like items that like were used to ward off vampires, like obviously garlic, but then like the reasoning behind stakes, millet, like small seeds, and hawthorn and stuff. Um, and I wanted to take basically the xenophobia that is in the original book of Dracula, and really kind of flip that because like a lot of what Garlic is about is like challenging expectations and the prejudices that come with them. So like really like flipping like that, like fearing the other, which has been very interesting in adapting Dracula, where I am very much making Dracula more of a literal mirror of England's like xenophobic ideas at the time. Um, and kind of it showing like how much they really feared the other. um, but yeah, I love folklore. I love all the things that people used to do to ward off spirits and things. And it's a really interesting well to dip into when I like need something.
Yes, and you all like pretty much touched on one of my next questions, but I'll bring it up if there's anything more specific you want to speak to on it. If not, you can be good. That's fine. Um, but yes, these like specific fears or monsters that each of the protagonists in your stories are facing. I feel like they are, it's not ever like a heavy-handed thing, but I feel like it makes these topics more palatable for a child. And it puts it in terms that make maybe a little more sense than some of the abstract concepts around these feelings. But Bree, you definitely have like that, the prejudices and sort of like misconceptions around people we don't know yet. And I think that made the like garlic's worries, they just sort of explode. And not just garlic, it's all the little garden friends. um but do you were you thinking about like little kids maybe being nervous meeting new people, or like what were some of the things you were
I
thinking?
mean, that was definitely me as a child. I like literally was at like events because my dad's a musician and has done some gigs at places. I like missed on the opportunity to meet Buzz Aldrin because I was too nervous. Like it's like that man's been to space. I'm gonna go over here. Um, but yeah, like I was very much that kid who was so afraid of like meeting people and stuff, and mostly because like I was just so anxious about things and have weird little phobias. Did anyone else get traumatized by the Red Robin at Red Robin's? Like it's like I know that a lot of friends who have like fears of costume characters because of that, and I'm glad that I'm not alone. Um,
Oh, I
but
absolutely fear costume characters. I could never go to Disney. Disney is a nightmare place for me.
I tried to take a picture with Donald for my birthday because I was like, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna face my fear and what do it. And like I made the mistake of putting my arm around because
Oh,
when they see someone nervous and put an arm around, they assume they're gonna get demasked. So
I'm
he just
fine with like regular costumes, but when you put a giant thing over your head, like why would you do that? Why would you put that huge thing over your head? What is wrong? I can't.
yeah. But yeah, Donald like grabbed my hand and like moved it in front of me. So like I were walking over to IHOP to get like free pancakes or whatever, and I'm just like holding my hand like ah. Um, yeah, whenever I'm at a convention and like there's like a really good fursuit, I was like, wow, your fursuit's amazing. Ah. Anyways,
So yes, horror doesn't have to look like the the scariest monster out there for people is like a good takeaway too, for sure. Um, Allie, you talked about your illness as being a very formative part of this book, and it's a very real part of a lot of kids' lives, I think. And some children's books out there do handle it very well, but it's not that common a theme. So I love having these different approaches out there for people who might need it. What do you think that the like Jack's whole experience of like processing what she went through? How do you think that could help a kid out there who, whether they're sick or they have a family member who is, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked a couple of times, like, did you write this for kids who are diagnosed with cancer? And my answer is yes and definitely no. Um, because that's not what it's what the book's about on a very technical level. It's
Mm-hmm.
not what the book's about in its heart. So I wrote this for kids who have to process anything that scares them. I wrote this for kids who shy away from dealing with things that scare them. Um, and I wrote it so that it could be a vehicle to have a conversation that I think adults aren't great at having. I think that we have a tendency to shy away from hard stuff when it comes to talking to kids. We have a tendency to not face the truths. And, like I said, I mean, kids know the world's a scary place. I mean, they live in a scary world. They know it is. I mean, how many more school shootings do there have to be for them to not know the world's a scary place? And I think that, you know, stories like this, if there's any takeaway that anyone has from this, I want it to be a conversation starter. I want it to be, if you can't talk about it, read this book, and then maybe we'll talk about the book, and maybe then we can talk about it. And I think adults need that too, because it's hard to be the one that initiates the scary conversation. I get that, but sometimes that's what the adults have to do. Because, I think one of the other things people also forget is that, like, I get asked, like how do you know how to write for kids since you're an adult? And I always say that I'm very in tune with who 12-year-old Allie was, and I am. And the reason that I am is because 12-year-old Allie, like every other 12-year-old on the planet, has the same range of emotions as the rest of us. They just don't always have the tools to express them. They don't always have the language to express them. And if this can be a vehicle to start that conversation, well, that's honestly the best thing that could ever come out of the worst diagnosis of my life. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's like one of the reasons why I made this book, to be kind of a conversation starter for like a military propaganda and like losing a parent, watching your parent succumb to illness, and then just like all sorts of nasty things that adults might like take advantage of children for and stuff. So, but like obviously child appropriate and like a good conversation starter for like
Yeah.
really heavy stuff that like kids are going to have to deal with.
Absolutely. Allie R, you put like a literal monster in your book. So, I mean, maybe that monster is just a monster, and that's fine because those exist too. Um, but yours is really fun. Yours is a fun read, I would say, even though it's got those chilling moments woven through it. But you also incorporate some heavier threads in there for your characters to cope with. Do you see the facing the monster as like a way to also deal with some of those other things in their life, or not? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Jenna and Reese and really all of their second scout troop, but particularly Jenna and Reese in the beginning, is that they're Black kids out in the woods. I In 2020, we watched, everybody was at home watching, social media, the news, movies, everything. Like we were all so tuned into media. And what did we see? How many videos did we watch with Black people simply enjoying life outdoors and then having that interrupted, by usually a white person who wanted to question their ability to enjoy the same outdoor spaces. And it was a reminder. We had, the guy who was just birding. He was just trying to document birds. There was a group of Black women who really enjoyed hiking. It was hiking or horseback riding, one of them. But they were stopped and questioned simply for enjoying the outdoors. And I think for Jenna and Reese in particular, and the thing that a lot of Black and brown kids, the threat in their life, unfortunately, is sometimes just the color of their skin, something that they can't help, something they're born with. And so in this particular situation, Jenna has always loved the outdoors, but there are adults who are making her feel unsafe in a space that's meant to be for everyone. And when Reese says something about these microaggressions, and again, Allie, you were just talking about like how kids don't always have the language. When I was a kid and microaggressions were committed against me, I didn't have that word, but you knew that something was off. You knew that something didn't feel right. And so, when Jenna and Reese, when they try to like call out what it is, they're told, no, that didn't happen. That's not a real thing. And so then we have this cryptid creature oh, you didn't see what you thought you saw. You didn't see Bigfoot. Bigfoot's not real. Racism's not real. Microaggressions are not real. So I think in a lot of ways, the creature in the book, like, yeah, it's fun. I love a good creature feature as much as anybody. But like there's some dark stuff under there. And there are people who are unwilling to look at it directly. I showed the Bigfoot photo, like that was fun, right? But like there are people who are going to look at that photo, and even if, you know, scientists comb through it and said, well, we see dermal ridges and we see, you know, there's hair that we can't, you know, categorize. Like even if you did all of that, there's still going to be a faction of people who will say, not real, not a real thing. So yeah, I think that like, yes, the monster, the I don't want to call him monster, but the creature in It Came from the Trees is fun, but like also it's representative of what a lot of Black and brown kids face simply by just existing.
Yes. So lots of gateways to conversations that are like important to living life can be had with just like some horror novels. Who knew? This is why we need them, everyone.
Yeah,
But
the
you
big
probably
Saying
scary.
also
horror is political, Julia?
What?
never, never. I don't get political.
It's also like children are like a demographic that is so easily gaslit about things that they're experiencing. And so like if something
Yeah.
bad is happening, and it's like, okay, I'm kind of really uncomfortable with like so and so right now. And it's like, oh, it's so you're just a child. You don't understand. Like,
Right, right.
Yeah, I
Those
mean
alarm
that.
bells are real.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole, that was like what we were talking about, is that, you know, they're not listened to, they're not believed. We don't know how to talk to them about hard things, and we actively choose not to, and it's not doing them any favors. And if books like the ones that we've written can help through that, I mean, I just think that's a wonderful thing, you know. I mean, my mantra through my treatment was the only way out is through. It's what I kept telling myself, you know, and it was the only way through accepting my diagnosis, through getting through the treatment. And it became Jack's only way of getting through the house. Like she says the same thing. The only way out is through. And the house becomes a metaphor for survival. And, you know, in the end, she learns that just because this thing happened to her doesn't mean she gets less. You know, she gets one life, which is what everybody gets. And it was just really important to me, I guess, you know, that she can learn that even though no one could talk to her about that, you know, getting back to the people's inabilities to talk about things. Like her mother can't talk to her about anything.
hmm.
And I think that, you know, like I said, at the end of the day, like we middle grade books are the vehicle for things that we as adults don't know how to talk to kids about, you know, and at least it's something.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we are here today because this is a library program primarily, and we have a librarian on our author panel here, Allie. Um, Very excited. But let's just do a quick little discussion of libraries. Like, what role did libraries play in your life as a kid? Or um, do you think like in a place like a library, having a program like the summer scares, do you think that's going to reach some different children than maybe standard programming might? Yeah.
Literally just had like a friend ask me personally, like, hey, do you know any like middle grade horror books? Because we have a kid at our local library who is asking for horror but needs like appropriate like horror. And so I offered some suggestions. Happy to have any more. But yeah, there's definitely a demand. I probably would have been more of a library kid if I knew that like there were better reading options. But again, like I I get approached a lot about garlic being very easy to read, especially for parents who have dyslexic children, because I'm dyslexic. So I wasn't much of a reader as a child because we didn't know how to really deal with that in the 90s. Without like inflicting trauma on children who just feel bad for not being able to read at the pace of their peers. So I am very thankful for the library services that I currently have access to. It's how I get most of my reading done, and I've become a very avid reader in past years because like I want to be a better writer. And some of the best stories that I've read and consumed have been books, especially horror books. So, yeah, I'm very glad that like when kids have access, and it's becoming, of course, a big issue, but also like libraries are like making themselves like accessible across borders. So it's like, hey, your state doesn't support your library, you can have access to our catalog like online. So, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my the library that I work for is Brooklyn Public Library. And you can access all of our ebooks wherever you are. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be here. You can be anywhere. You get a digital card. You have access to everything. I think for me, as I said, I am elderly. So growing up as a child in the 80s was not a great time economically for those of you who were around for it. So my family, like every other family I knew, all wound up having less employed parents than they would have liked. So for me, the library was it was the only place I had access to books because if I was getting a book to own, that was for birthdays and Christmas only. And the rate at which I consumed books, that would be unacceptable. So I basically lived at my library. I went through the kids section pretty quickly, I'll be honest. But my parents were very like blasé about what I read. They were really, really adamant about what I watched, but I could get away with reading a lot of, which is, why I'm sneaking the Stephen King. But yeah, I mean, libraries were really important to me. And as I grew up, they continued to be. I started working in a library as a part-timer in college. I volunteered at the library when I was in high school. And I graduated college with a writing degree, so I was not employable. And I was like, well, I guess I have to do something to pay back these college loans before they put me in loan jail. And so I got my master's degree because you have to get a master's degree to be a librarian. And not a lot of people know that because more money, why not? So I got my master's degree and I became my first library job was a children's librarian, which I loved doing for a very long time. But eventually you do the itsy bitsy spider 6 times a day and you want to cry yourself to sleep. So I moved on and now I work in a historical center as a research librarian, which is really, really interesting work. And I do a lot of genealogy research for people. I do just a lot of historical research on Brooklyn. I've learned a lot about city that I live in, which is always exciting. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they saved me when I was a kid and they saved me through capitalism now. So, go libraries.
Yeah. I Fun fact, Allie and I have a fun connection because you went to school in Pittsburgh, right?
Yes, I did.
Was it Carnegie Library
It is the Carnegie
yeah, yeah,
Library
yeah.
where I met my husband. Yep. That is where I worked part-time initially. And he is also a librarian, so we are giant
Yeah.
dorks.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Pittsburgh.
Well,
Great town.
I'm from Pittsburgh, and the
Yep.
Carnegie Library is where, the East Liberty branch is where I spent some of my time as a child.
Yep.
So we again, one of 4 kids, so we used free resources as much as we could. But I stopped going to that library after I accidentally stole a book. And then for years after, I thought that like, oh, if I go get a library card, man, they're gonna look me up and they're gonna see that you stole Tales for the Midnight Hour by J.B. Stamper and that you didn't return it. And
Library jail.
immediate library jail, like immediately. And I didn't get a library card again. I'm ashamed to admit I didn't get a library card again until I moved to Boston and was like, oh, I work, right down the street from BPL. Let me go get a library card. They won't be able to track me. This is a different state. So But yeah,
That's great.
it's definitely a library kid for a
You
short amount
and
of time.
you and Paul Tremblay have so much in common because he also stole a book from a library, but mind you, he
Yeah.
did this as a grown adult. Good job, Paul. We know, Paul. All the librarians know.
Oh my goodness. You guys, I think we're almost to time. I have loved chatting with you all today. Thank you so, so much. Is there anything you all want to shout out about, like new projects that are coming out, things you're working on while you have like a nice little floor here?
If you're in the LA area, literally this Saturday, I'm going to be at the Natural History Museum for the Comic Arts and Literacy Expo. There's a few other cartoonists who are going to be there. Obviously, that's just very regional. Yeah, my next book, Dearest Mina, which is a adaptation of Dracula told from Mina's point of view, comes out not this summer, but next summer. And please send me all the strength to get that done. It's a very difficult book.
I did not smartly introduce all my books the way Allie M did. But I have other books out. So if you like Wednesday, I wrote a Wednesday book about Nevermore Academy. I also have a book about spiders. It was in Scholastic Book Fairs for a while, but if spiders are or are not your thing, either way, you can read it. But then I also have Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave. This is my newest, and it's a duology, and it's about a girl who was abandoned in a cemetery, raised in a funeral home, and she can smell ghosts. And the sequel to duology, so the sequel is coming out in September.
And it's up for Stoker.
Oh yeah,
Live with mine. We're up for Stokers, girl. Come on.
listen, Allie, I got home at midnight. I told you it's been a week.
Fair, fair, fair. I will do all the bragging on your behalf. I live for it. Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. So I don't have anything coming out right away. I'm on submission with a witch book, where the witch is not the bad guy. It's a family of witches. It's a very sister book. Because I have two sisters and they are anxiously awaiting to read it, which will hopefully go over well. Um, and I am currently working on a Monsters in the Wood book, from which I have been reading and rereading Allie's amazing It Came from the Woods book. So I highly recommend everybody get your hands on that one. And it's been fun. And like I said, I have a small inkling of a YA Arctic horror book, and then, somewhere down the road, maybe something for the big kids. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if they deserve it. We'll see.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for all of these things. All right, you all, you can turn off your videos. I just have a couple closing slides to wrap things up. But truly, thank you so much for hanging out today and talking with me. Um, Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, Summer Scares programming guide, and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones. And don't forget to register for the next two Summer Scares webinars. We will have one for our YA books and our adult books for this year. And they'll be happening later this month. Sign up on the Booklist website. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. And one more huge thanks to our panelists, Allie, Bree, and Allie. And thank you for helping us celebrate Summer Scares.